Well, as we've been hearing, the hopes were high that thousands of civilians could safely leave on Wednesday morning, but then the fighting resumed. Let's listen to what some activists have had to say as shelling resumed during the morning.
Missile just fell on the roof of my building, and now the people who were waiting the bus have to run back for their life again and find shelter.
Hey everybody, here now the attacks is being very intensified now against the east and my area as well. It's in Al-Mashhad districts where the artillery bombs have been dropping here since 1 hour. We've counted more than 50 artillery attacks and anti-launched bombs that have been dropped here. We don't know if there's casualties or not, or dead or not.
There are also reports that Iran has put new conditions on the safe evacuation of civilians. Ediz Tiyansan is in Gaziantep near the Turkish-Syrian border.
Well, unfortunately, we are seeing another setback in this evacuation deal. Now, remember that it all started out well when late Tuesday we had seen a cessation of hostilities, which continued into the first hours of Wednesday. But earlier today, just a couple of hours ago, there were loud explosions heard just near eastern Aleppo. Opposition sources were saying that regime forces have broken this ceasefire agreement, or violated it rather, by shelling multiple areas in that eastern Aleppo enclave. And they also said that many people were wounded. We cannot exactly confirm at this point if there are any casualties or how many there are, but we can say with certainty that the ceasefire has already been violated. Now, there were dozens of buses, roughly 33 buses, just waiting outside eastern Aleppo on that main road where the evacuation was expected to begin, but just recently, a few hours ago, those buses are also now reported to have departed from that location back to those regime-held part of Aleppo. So essentially, it seems that the evacuation cannot happen anytime so soon because, first of all, the ceasefire is still being violated occasionally, and the buses that were supposed to carry those civilians are no longer there.
Well, the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has accused Bashar al-Assad of committing war crimes and has called for a safe humanitarian corridor from Aleppo to be opened immediately.
The ceasefire was possible through the intense interventions of Turkey, and perhaps this is the last hope for the innocent people of Aleppo. That's why I invite all the parties and international community to follow and support this ceasefire. This human corridor should be open without any barriers and no sabotage, and those innocent people should leave eastern Aleppo safely.
Well, our correspondent Andrew Hopkins was listening in to that speech.
This speech contained an admission from the Turkish president that the ceasefire deal, which has come about after several meetings between Russian and Turkish officials, is in a bit of trouble at the moment. He said he had been on the phone to the Russian President Vladimir Putin to talk about the issue, as had the Turkish foreign minister. He's been speaking to his opposite number as well, and other officials have got involved to try and keep this ceasefire deal above the water, if you like, to keep it afloat. He said that it had only been in place for a few hours, but yet there had been reports of more fighting taking place, and it seems there are some more obstacles to get over to make sure everything goes to plan here. Another issue that he brought up was that of humanitarian aid. He said that the international community and some members of the United Nations had not really done enough, had not spoken loudly enough to make sure some of these supplies were getting through to the people in need in the city of Aleppo. He said that the Turkish government would continue to support them, would continue to do what it could to help them, also maybe referring to some of the plans it's got in the pipeline at the moment. We know that the Turkish government is working on setting up a new refugee camp just inside the Syrian border, across from the Turkish province of Hatay.
Andrew Hopkins in Ankara. Well, Russia's foreign minister says talks with the United States over Syria are pointless. He says negotiations with other factions in the conflict have proved more productive in bringing an end to the fighting.
We're talking to all the groups of fighters, except for Daesh and Jabhat Fateh al-Sham, which have been included in the terrorist lists. And we are talking to countries in the region, including our Turkish colleagues, who have contacts with the fighters on the ground and the armed opposition. I think that this channel may become more effective than many months of our pointless hangouts we have had with the American colleagues.
Well, Russia and Turkey had also tried to broker a ceasefire deal to lead to the evacuation of civilians. That deal, as we've heard, is on hold for now, but people are still leaving the area. Julia Lyubova has more from Moscow.
Early on Wednesday, the Russian Defense Ministry has released the latest figures on the people who have left eastern Aleppo so far. They were quoted by the Russian news agency Interfax, and according to them, in the past 24 hours, almost 6,000 civilians have left the city. Among them are 2,000 children. In the same period, the Russian Defense Ministry says that 366 rebels have laid down their arms and have moved out of rebel-held areas of the city. At the same time, Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov says that Moscow expects that the rebel resistance in Aleppo will end in 2 to 3 days' time. Moscow says it hopes that the situation in the city will be resolved in that time. So 2 to 3 days, that's the Russian timeline for the situation to be resolved. At the same time, Moscow says that the rebels had resumed fighting in the city at dawn. And according to Moscow, the Syrian army repelled their resistance. So the operation to very much continues to withdraw rebels from the city and also to evacuate the civilians.